Up next, Ross Yang. He's developing a chart selection matrix for visualizing national household travel survey data. Dr. Ross Wang is on the R&D staff of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, and without my glasses, I first thought it said D&D staff, which, frankly, that's the wrong conference. He is one of the key members of several national transportation data programs, including the National Household Travel Survey and the FHWA Analysis Framework. He's currently developing a web-based data analytics and visualization tool for NHTS add-on users. Ross, thanks so much for coming here.
Michael, I think I messed up your light a little bit. I think I kicked the light. Is that yours? Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the last session. My name is Ross Wang. I will be presenting a little effort that we're currently working on developing a visualization tool for National Household Travel Survey users. And the topic that I will be talking about is developing a chart selection matrix, or more like a chart selection logic for visualizing National Household Travel Survey data. I would like to acknowledge my co-authors that helped contribute to the results here. So I'll be give a brief introduction of the National Household Travel Survey, the data set, and Oak Ridge's rule, Oak Ridge National Laboratory's rule on it, and then I'll be reviewing some of the chart selection guidance that's been presented before, and I'm glad Brendan actually mentioned some of the chart selection that users can do. So that's one of the interests for my research is to be able to give some guidance, recommended charts that they can use for the type of data that or type of variables they are trying to use to analyze the data. And then I'll be talking about some of the fundamental charts and visual attributes that we considered in our current study, and I'll also talk about the characteristics of the variables that will link with the charts, type of charts and attributes that we select. And finally, I'll show some preliminary results that we've done and open to suggestions and comments. So I asked this question earlier when I presented another paper. Is there anyone in the room that don't have any idea what National Household Travel Survey data is? Can you raise your hand? Okay. Okay, so this is conducted by Federal Highway Administration. It's a nationwide survey, basically trying to understand how people move, how people travel in terms of what type of mode, transportation mode they use, how much time it takes them to travel, how many miles they travel, what kind of vehicles they use, what's their demographic information in terms of gender, in terms of their educational status, their age, their household situation, and all that. So it gives an overview of what American people, how American people are traveling. It's an authoritative national data set that's been used by a lot of different transportation communities in planning, in understanding travel behaviors, in understanding mode trace and all that. And it started as a project, I believe, with the Census Bureau as a NPTS, Nationwide Personal Transportation Survey, and it was renamed to NHTS in 2001. And the data set we'll be using and we're looking at is 2017. That's the newest data set that's available out there. Oak Ridge National Laboratory is in charge of hosting the data website. So I put the link up here. That's nhts.ornl.gov. Starting in early 2000s, we started to do some tool development for people to use this data sets instead of just letting people download the data. So we're providing some tools for you to quickly generate some tabulations, and right now moving towards generating visualization for users to quickly get a sense of how people are traveling. For example, what's the impact of income to the miles traveled per year, things like that. And I'll be showing some of those in my later presentation. And just to give you an idea of what how big the data set is, The 2017, there's about 130 households that's been surveyed. Among those, 26,000 were the national data set, and about 103,000 were add-on data sets. What that means is that state DOTs or MPOs, you're allowed to contribute more to the program so that you can get more sample points for your jurisdiction, so that you have better representation of the data points that you need for whatever reasons. And that adds up to about just a little bit shy of 1 million trips that's been included in that data. And the specific data set that I've been looking at is the New York State add-on data set. It's about 15,000 households that's been surveyed, and it's about 120,000 trips that's been included. And like I said earlier, we're the ones that's hosting the data website, and I'm currently developing a web-based tool for visualizing data for add-on agencies, including New York State. And this is a screenshot of what it looks like, and I'll show some more later on in my later slides. So just want to give you a quick review of chart selection guidance that's been out there. So this is one of them that it says chart suggestions of thought starter. So it's basically for people to start thinking what kind of charts they want to use based on the data. So the central question is in the middle here, what would you like to show, right? Do you want to show distribution? Do you want to show relationship? Do you want to show comparison or composition? So things like, if you want to show distribution, you can show histogram, you can show different things like that. And then if you want to show composition, you can use pie chart or some other means. So it gives you some guidance, right? So as a data user, you're not just overwhelmed by the amount of charts that's out there. I'm going to move on to the next slide. This is probably a very comprehensive chart selection that you can use. But as a user, a lot of times you get overwhelmed. Like, there are so many options. Why do I choose this one over that one? And specific to the National Household Travel Survey, most of our users are state DOTs or MPO staff. They may not have the data analytics background, and for them to have so many options, sometimes it's just overwhelming. In this case, similarly, it's showing what kind of relationship you want to show, right? Sorry, it's probably not readable up there, but it's showing, for example, if you're showing that deviation, what kind of charts you can use, correlation, ranking, distribution, change over time, magnitude, part to whole, spatial, and flow. So it gives you a really good overview of what you can use. For National Household Travel Survey, it's slightly different, which I'll touch on later, but I'll keep moving on. There are some other tools that's been developed to help people choosing charts. And again, it's trying to feature different relationships you want to show, whether or not it's a time series, you want to show ranking, you want to show part to whole, and deviation, distribution, correlation, geospatial, and so on, and what kind of charts you can choose. And this is another one which is more simplified. But one thing that's been noticed among these guidance tools is that they started with the relationship you want to show, what kind of stories you want to tell. But a lot of times it's from tool development point of view, it's hard to ask your user what kind of relationship, what you want to show. So it's more like the other way around, right? So the users, the data sets here, these are the variables. If you use these variables, what kind of charts? I can programmatically, in my tool, give you suggestions. So my take on this is that instead of using relationship-based selection, so it's kind of reverse from it. So it's looking at the variables that you're selecting. Based on these variables, then I give you some suggestions in terms of what charts can be used. And this is an example of variable-based selection. So this is developed by NC State University, and it's basically looking at the characteristics of variables, right? Whether or not dependent variable independent variable? Is it quantitative? Is it qualitative? And if so, then what kind of charts you can use? So this is one example. But as you can see, it's not as rich as the previous charts previous guidance that we showed that's out there. This is another example which it's not a paper or a chart per se, matrix per se, but it's a ITS JPO, ITS Data Hub. They provide you a tool, a function that you can visualize data. And what they do is once you pull a data set in, and then you can select what variables you want to use to filter the data, and then it will give you green lights in terms of what kind of charts are more recommended for showing the information that you're selecting. And what they are using is basically whether or not it's a numeric variable or if it's a categorical variable. So somewhere along that line, the objective, our research is to develop a systematic and most important is programmatically way to suggest or to select charts for visualizing specifically for National Household Travel Survey data. The take is that as we're developing the tool, again, we cannot go back and forth with the user on the fly over the web tool saying that, hey, do we want to show composition? Do you want to show time series? Do you want to show part to whole? So we kind of have to go with the other approach, which is based on the variables that the user select, then we think these charts can be useful. And then the user will have to select from there. And they can apply the guidelines and the chart selection matrices that are shown in the existing work to help them come up with the final product. All right, so the methodology is like this. We kind of identify the gaps and need, like I said earlier, is for tool development purpose. And then we define fundamental charts that will give the basic ideas that can show the relationships that we want to show. And then on top of that, we add visual attributes, which I'll talk about that later. So instead of giving you 100 charts that you can select from, kind of start from fundamental charts and then add elements to those charts to make it tell your story. And then identify key variable characteristics, and finally kind of provide a logic to map your variable characteristics to the charts that can be selected. And finally, I'll show some demonstrations of our previous work, the existing work, and then whatever is proposed here is not fully implemented yet, so that will be the next step for us. So like I said earlier, most of the existing chart selection guidelines focus on relationship-based. You kind of have to know what stories you want to tell, and then it tells you what kind of charts it's good to select. And also many of the charts include a lot of options. Sometimes it may be overwhelming for a lot of people. So there's need for a variable-based approach, like I said earlier, and also a simple selection, just to help with the chart selection going, and then you can figure out more variations that you can add to your chart. So this is what we propose. We think there are basically six fundamental charts, and Stephen Few is a writer that writes visualization books, and he kind of proposed the first 4 and 5-ish. He doesn't like the area charts, but so this is kind of based on what he did, and then expanded to more for the National Household Travel Survey data that we can utilize. So these are the fundamental charts, including points, lines, bars, boxes, area, and maps. Now, once you have these fundamental charts, then you can work on the chart attributes, the visual attributes that makes charts different. So what I mean by that is you can look at the position on the paper, right? So on the space and the orientation in order. For example, a bar chart can be a vertical bar chart, or some people call it column charts. It can be a horizontal chart, and this is the orientation difference. but it's fundamentally the same. There are bars, right? And then it can be ordered by the values, right? So right now we're not in the same order now. It's ordered from high to low, for example. And now we can add the second attribute, which shows you two categories using color information. You can do, so this is, we call it stacked bar, right? So you have two categories, you stack them together. You can also make them percentage, so all the bars adds up to 100%. So what's the percentage of the first category versus the second category? And then you can do, instead of doing stacked, you can do side by side or grouped, okay? So these are all bar chart in this case, but we give them different attributes. And then you can do color. Color, it could be hue, saturation, or value. It could be the thickness of your line. It could be the width of your bar. It could be the size of your points. It could be the shape of your points, be it square, triangle, or circles. It could be the pattern of your lines. Is it dotted lines or solid line? It could be the pattern of your fill to the bars, whether or not it's solid fill, whether or not it's shaded in what format. So based on those attributes, these fundamental charts becomes a full list of a lot of different charts. But the idea is for users to be able to have those fundamental charts and then work on the attributes to come up with the final results that they want to tell their stories. I'm running late, so I'm gonna kind of jump forward. So these are the variable characteristics, which I kind of skipped the last slide, but just in short, we look at whether or not the variable is quantitative, is it categorical, whether or not it's showing spatial information, whether or not it's showing time information, and whether or not it's showing flow in terms of from point A to point B. And based on that, we kind of come up with the logic that's shown here that based on the characteristics of the variable, these are the possible charts that can be used, a graphic that can be used. Again, I'm going to just jump over. So this is the tool that we developed. It's a very simple tool that the variables are listed on the left, and you can do the search bar, or you can just, if you know the variable name, you can just drag and drop it to the filter area, which will filter the data based on this variable. And what people are looking at for National Household Travel Survey data is personal mile traveled, personal trips, number of trips, vehicle miles traveled, and vehicle trips. Now, we can, in this case, I'm showing categorical results, right? So we're having a bar chart here. And on the top here shows you different attributes that you can select. You can do average of the trips based on person, number of person, or number of household. You can do different measures that you want to look at, whether or not it's person trips, person miles traveled, vehicle trip, vehicle miles traveled. Once you have another categorical variable, then you can filter the data based on the stack bars that we just showed. And the two variables up there are household income and educational level. So you can see that the income level, when it grows, the tendency is that the person miles traveled is more. And you can put them in a groups of bars, and you can see the trends of different categories, different attributes. I'm going to skip. And then this is an example of our map visualization. Basically, it's the same measures, right? We're talking about personal trips, personal miles travel, PT, VT, and VMT, and then based on different category, geographic information. Right now, we're showing the county information. So the color is basically showing the values of your trips. And we can also show flow. In this case, we're using map, and basically you can select the origin, and it's going to show you what are the trips that's being generated from this county to the other counties. And then you can color code it, and you can also draw lines. So in this case, it's not only map, but it's map plus lines. And then there are some other exploratory visualization that we did that I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip. But finally, I'll end with this slide. It's showing flow as well, and that's kind of related to what Michael showed yesterday about the chord diagram. And I asked the question about how do you choose the color and how do you order the states or the counties in this case. And I don't have a good answer to that, but this is, like I said, exploratory. So instead of doing a chord diagram, we can do a Sankey chart like this, and you can be interactive. So whenever you point to a county as the origin, it kind of blows out to in the destination area, so you can see how many trips are from each county that's as the destination from this county. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and sorry I went over a little bit. I guess we'll take questions or.
Sure. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, please come to the mic.
I have a quick one. What charting API are you using, or are you building your own?
So we did use, for the bar charts, line charts and all that, we use Plotly, same as Brendan mentioned. And the mapping is leaflet. And then I built the whole framework by myself. So I'm pulling those tools, using those tools.
On the map with the lines showing flow, do you have any thoughts on strategies for avoiding just kind of hairballs where you have too many lines overlapping and you can't tell what's going on?
Yep. So can we go back to that slide real quick? So the lines were not straight lines. Those are curved lines. So they are kind of programmed in a way that it's curving counterclockwise. So, and it's based on origin to destination. So it's curved in a way that it's helpful for people to easier for the lines, as long as the destination and origin are not the same point, the lines are kind of preventing from overlapping with each other. So the farther it is, the higher the curvature is. So it kind of creates that space that overlays the lines are a little bit easier. And also I'm using transparency, so it's helpful in that regard. And the lines are interactive too, so when you point to a certain line, it will show you the information of that line.
Are these all open sourced?
The tools that we used are all open source. And the data is open source for the national data set is open to the public. The add-on data set, I believe you have to talk to the Federal Highway to get access to. But it's, if you're doing research that's related to this area, a lot of people have gained access to those data sets.
And so I assume it's on GitHub or somewhere else?
You mean the tool itself?
The tool, yeah.
The tool itself is not yet.
Okay.
But the libraries, the APIs that we use are all open source. It's kind of, so I'm the one who put everything together, but we're using open source libraries.
But will the tool, everything
That's a good
together,
question.
that will be open source, or?
That's a very good question. I don't know the answer yet. Yeah. But if you have questions, I'll be more than happy to talk. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, well,
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.